So what is this session about? So we are delighted to partner with Volunteer Scotland to present information on the changes to the Protecting Vulnerable Groups scheme. The session will provide information about how your parent group can prepare for the changes to the scheme and access free PVG checks. Now, before I hand over to Duncan, I just want to quickly run through this slide about Connect, because I know there are a number of people here tonight that are maybe coming into contact with us as an organisation for the first time. So we are the only charity and membership organisation in Scotland for parent groups, and we currently have 25 local authorities that pay for a membership for their parent councils, and we offer a number of services and supports to our members who are parent councils in the majority, but we also work with other types of parent groups. We're all about partnerships in education, ensuring that the voice of parents is heard in all matters relating to education. We're an independent organisation, but we do work very closely with our partners like Volunteer Scotland, the Scottish Government, local authorities, and anyone else who's really looking to support parents and families to be involved in education. So there's a bit of information there if you're interested in finding a bit more about Connect. If you have a parent council or a parent group in your community, there's some information there, and there's more information at the end of this PowerPoint presentation to contact us to hear more about it. So now I'm about to hand over to Duncan. So as I said, please do put the questions in chat. We will send information on to you tomorrow or over the next few days. We'll try our best to answer the questions, but we might not be able to answer them all here tonight. So please welcome Duncan Steele, who is a compliance officer with Volunteer Scotland. He's worked with us really hard over the last few weeks to put together this presentation. So I hope you join me in giving him a big welcome and a huge thank you for joining us and sharing his knowledge and expertise tonight on these changes. So thank you, Duncan. I'll hand over to you now.
Okay. Thank you, Diane, and welcome everybody. As Diane says, my name's Duncan. I work here for Volunteer Scotland Disclosure Services, and we are funded by Disclosure Scotland there to specifically work with the voluntary sector. So next slide now. And what we're going to be looking at this evening is the Disclosure Scotland Act, which went live today. And we're going to just highlight the main changes that are going to impact basically on every group that is working with children and protected adults as well. But tonight we'll be looking at work with children, and it's about thinking how these changes are going to impact us as parent councils, and then answer any questions that we may have. So on to the next one. So first thing around the changes to the PVG system is, as of today, the PVG system is a legal requirement. Anybody who is undertaking paid work or volunteering with vulnerable groups, be they children and or protected adults, will now be required to be a member of the PVG scheme. If you're in a role that meets the criteria of being able to access a PVG check, you now need to have the PVG check undertaken, completed, that information back on those individuals. It will be an offence for you to place somebody into a PVG position without first completing the appropriate PVG check, and it can also be an offence for you as the individual to undertake a regulated position without joining the appropriate PVG scheme. Now, obviously, it goes, or it went, I'm in that period of I can never understand where I am, but it has gone live today, the Disclosure Scotland Act. So the legal requirement has now come into effect, if you like. But obviously, what that could do is, on the list of attendees here at the top, I have Denise there and Wendy and Marion. So let's say, for example, Denise, Wendy and Marion currently don't have a PVG. They wouldn't be able to do the regulated roles without that PVG. That might stop activities from happening. So what we've got between now and the end of June is a grace period. Anybody that you have doing a regulated role, you must have submitted their PVG check by the end of June. If we go on to the next slide. So as we said, it will be an offence for you to offer any new type of a regulated position unless they have received the PVG check back from the individual. So going to stick with Denise here just because Denise is at the top of my list. If Denise comes to us as the Parent Council, we're wanting Denise to help out at activities that are going to involve working with children, etc. But Denise doesn't have a PVG check. It will be an offence for us to place Denise into that regulated position where Denise is going to be working with children, and it will be an offence for Denise also to undertake that regulated role. However, it will not be an offence for Denise if Denise already has a PVG check for work elsewhere, for work with children, and we put Denise into the role. It will only then be an offence for us as the employing group, such as the Parent Council. So basically, from today, every position, be it paid, be it voluntary, be it through your day jobs, be it through the work with the parent councils, if an individual is going to be placed into a regulated position, it is now effectively subject to the completion of an appropriate PVG check. So then we've got Wendy there. If Wendy comes in and says, well, I've already got a PVG check from my day job. Look, I only had it done last week. Here's my PVG result. If we are offering a regulated position to Wendy, we still have to do a PVG application, a check on Wendy. The legal requirement is that the individuals must be disclosure checked against every group that they are undertaking regulated roles with. So if they are doing regulated roles with the Parent Council, that will fall into PVG. Okay, next slide. So as we say, we've got the 3-month grace period until the end of June. So as we were saying, Denise, Wendy, Marion there fall into PVG, currently don't have the check, so it might be that we can't run some activities. To counter that, to stop groups shutting down, there will be this 3-month grace period. You must have submitted by the end of June the applications for those individuals. You do not have to have the results back by the 30th of June. It is that you have submitted the PVG application for them. It is sitting there on the system. What you're then looking at is the offence comes in from the 1st of July. So from the 1st of July onwards, which will effectively be the school holidays, from then onwards, and any individual who is undertaking a regulated role will legally be required to be a member of the PVG system. That will be that you, as the employing group, have seen the result of that individual's PVG check. They have shared the information with you to let you see that they are appropriate to be working with children with protected adults. So here it will mainly be children. Okay, next slide. So what you're looking at, as we said, is that individuals will be required to be disclosure checked across all of the individual roles that they're undertaking that are classed as being a regulated role. So for example, we've got an individual there who is working as an after-school club volunteer. They would access a PVG check there. Might be through the local authority. Disclosure Scotland give out the information, that goes to the individual, goes to the local authority. The individual's able to work there at the after school club. You've also got that individual might also be a care assistant in a care home or something similar. And again, to ensure that we've always got the link between the individual, the group, and Disclosure Scotland, we've got the arrows connecting everybody there. Every individual, as we say, in a regulated role must be a member of the appropriate PVG scheme. So as we said there, even if the individual is volunteering at an after-school club, even if they are a PVG scheme member through their day job, they still require to have a PVG check via the Parent Council if they are in a regulated role. So everybody will have to, as we say, get the appropriate PVGs. And as we're saying there, just at the bottom, never rely on seeing the PVG certificate applicant obtained for doing work elsewhere. It is now a legal requirement for you to do your own PVG checks on relevant individuals. And next there, which brings us to teachers. As you may have worked out there, a teacher is employed by the school via the local authority. Therefore, their employer is the school. Their employer is the local authority. If a teacher is in a regulated position within your parent council and is undertaking the regulated roles with children on a regular basis, you as the parent council will require to have them do a PVG check for that role with you. It will not be enough for them to have a PVG check through the school. The school is classed as a different organisation. Parent councils within the PVG system are entitled to what are called fee waiver checks. That is that you, as a volunteer within the parent council, do not have to pay for the disclosure check. Schools are not classed as qualifying voluntary organisations within PVG. Any PVG check that is done by the school must be paid for. So that's one of the reasons why we would also say have parent councils have school activities separate. School activities, all of the applications have to be paid for, be you volunteering or in a paid position, whereas with the parent council, you then have all of the volunteers, be they parents, be they teachers, would fall in to the fee waiver if they're volunteering for you within the parent council. So next there. So what we're doing moving forward is replacing the concept of what is currently, or was until yesterday, regulated work with regulated roles that qualify for PVG scheme membership. So say there, roles will be determined by power and influence an individual may have over children or adults who are protected as a result of receiving a service. The presence of specific activities within the role will determine their disclosure type, and it should make it easier for everybody to understand and for employers to identify when to utilise disclosure checks. So next. What we've then got, and as you can see, it has just popped up there in the chat at the bottom of my screen there, is for you to PVG check anybody, they must be doing the regulated role with you on a regular basis as a part of their normal duties. So that is where you, if you like, as the employer, we will call it the parent council, you have the reasonable expectation, anticipation that an individual will be undertaking activities with children for you on a regular basis. And as we've got there, there is no definition of regular. This may be daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly. So if I look down the screen there, I've got Denise there. So if Denise at the school there is putting on a school disco, let's say once a term. So we're going to have one in October, we're going to have one in December, going to have an Easter one, going to have a summer one, 4 activities over the course of the year. If we are using the same parents, the same people who are in charge of supervising the children, that then will be our regular normal duties. That will fall into the PVG system. You do not require a PVG check if your work with vulnerable individuals is incidental to your normal role or is, for example, carried out as a one-off. So, as we said there, Denise is going to be, let's say, doing 4 school discos a year, is going to be arranging 2 school trips with the parent council. So Denise is going to have the opportunity for contact, work with children 6 times a year. That will be normal duties. That will bring Denise into the PVG system. There I can see as well, we've got Roddy there. Let's say Roddy wants to offer his assistance. Roddy's going to come along, let's say, do the Easter school disco as a one-off, isn't going to volunteer again, isn't looking to come and help out at other events. We wouldn't need a PVG check for that. We've got Claire there. Let's say Claire is going to be collecting the money at the front door from people attending the disco. Claire is looking at collecting the money for people who are going on a school trip, but Claire isn't going to have direct supervision contact with children on a regular basis. So Claire doesn't require a PVG check. Let's also go there with Vanessa. Let's say Vanessa is one of the teachers at the school, and Vanessa is going to have the responsibility to open up the school, to make sure that the event happens, and then come back at the end of the evening and lock up the school again. Vanessa wouldn't fall into the PVG system for that. Vanessa is not there to work specifically with children. So Vanessa, yes, is helping to ensure that the event runs, but because you're not having the regulated contact with children, you don't fall into the PVG system. And next there. So as we said there earlier, there are two different types of regulated roles. There's work with children and there is work with protected adults. Guess what we'll be looking at with parent councils is work with children, which will be under 18s. Next. And what you've then got is what is deemed to be a regulated role. So where you have contact with children, you have physical contact, written communication, verbal communication, visual communication. Contact with children does not have to be direct. It does not have to be face-to-face. It could be, for example, let's go there with, we've got Stacey there. So for example, Stacey is turning out at events where there are going to be children physically present. Stacey is coming into regular physical contact with them. Stacey requires a PVG check. We've also got, for example, written verbal communication. If we are offering sort of telephone support, to children within the school, if we are writing information that would support children within the school, that can also fall into PVG. And we've got visual communication as well. Basically, if we are assisting, for example, any individual with a hearing impairment who we may require to do some sign language for. Things like that would fall into PVG. Your physical, your written, your verbal, your visual contact essentially isn't a change from the previous PVG system. It's still, if we are directly working with children, if we're offering online support, if we're offering telephone support to individuals, then that can bring you into the PVG system. But what we do have is a new area of regulated role contact, which is the one at the bottom, which is exercising power or influence. So if you are assisting, facilitating, permitting, or impeding progress towards a desirable objective or outcome for particular children, if you are making decisions of an operational or strategic nature that can impact on a number of children, or if you are persuading or putting pressure on a particular child to behave or act in a certain manner for the financial gain or personal gratification of a person other than that child, then that will bring you into the PVG system. It's about having power or influence. If you have power or influence over the activities, the decisions that are taken within your parent council around children, then that can bring you into the PVG system. Next slide there. And what you're looking at there is if your parent council has as one of its main activities the provision of benefits for or to children, i.e. you're undertaking regulated activities with them, so you're teaching, training, instructing them, you're in sole charge of them, etc. If that is one of your main purposes as a parent council, then as we're saying there at the bottom bit, if you have trustees, a management committee, a board, directors, those individuals, if they are in one of the positions of power or influence via the three previous criteria, that will bring them into the PVG system. They do not, as we say at the bottom, have to have any direct contact with children and or protected adults. Now, here we have to be clear, it is individuals who are in a position of power or influence, where you as a parent council are, as one of your main purposes, providing benefits to children, regulated roles. So we have there, I've got Susan there on the list of participants. So Susan's parent council, for example, is only fundraising for the school. They're running raffles, quiz nights, whatever. They are fundraising for the school. Any money they make goes to the school to spend on new equipment, etc. Susan's parent council then are not, as one of their main aims, providing benefits to children. Susan's then parent council does not have anybody in a position of power or influence that requires a PVG check. Let's say then above Susan on my list, I've got Jenna there. Jenna's parent council are running activities for children. Jenna's parent council are, as one of their main aims, looking to work with children. So then it comes down to, on our list of, as we say, trustees, management committee members, board members or directors, who within that has a position of power or influence. So it may be, for example, that Jenna is responsible for the activities that are going to be undertaken in the parent council there, working with the children. Jenna's going to have responsibility for what we're doing this term. So Jenna, even though may not ever have any contact with the children, has a position of power or influence. But let's say we've got Joan there, or Joanne there. Joanne is, for example, the bookkeeper for the parent council. Joanne is making sure that the parent council is running, it's got money to deliver any services, activities that it wants to do. Yes, Joanne is in charge of the finance, but because Joanne is not deciding how that money is spent, Joanne does not fall into a position of power, a position of influence. If Joanne, for example, had access to the budget, and let's say Joanne's got £1,000 to spend over the course of the next term, and Joanne is going to spend that on activity A, activity B, activity C for the children within the school, then that would see Joanne fall into a position of power or influence. This is not, the legal requirement isn't that everybody falls into the PVG system. It still has to be your normal duties if you are working with children, working with protected adults. But if you are going, if you are going to work with children, then you will have the power or influence, or if you are going to be overseeing the work that is going on with children. I can see we're getting I can see there's a whole load of questions coming up there about I'm going too fast, or this is tricky to understand. Right, so as we say, so what we're saying is, for any position at all, be it you are directly working with children, be it you are on the committee and are not directly working with the children, it's about whether or not, first off, it is your normal duties. If your normal duties are to work with vulnerable people, that brings you into the PVG system if that work is being undertaken on a regular basis. If the work is not being undertaken on a regular basis, then you would not be looking at accessing a PVG check. Your work, your contact would be deemed to be incidental to the work with vulnerable individuals, so you don't need a check. However, as we say, new area of a regulated role is power or influence. If you have that power or influence over work with children, then you will fall into the PVG system if you meet one of the 3 criteria around the regulated roles, just around, for example, the assisting, facilitating, permitting, or impeding progress towards a desirable objective, or making decisions of an operational or strategic nature that can impact children, or persuading or putting pressure on children to behave or act in a certain manner for the financial gain or personal gratification of somebody other than the child. So we will have questions at the end if anybody wants more information on that. So next. So for example, here we've got an example. So it's, we're a third sector playgroup with a parent committee that changes every year. Roles are voted in at the annual AGM in June. So at what point will these individuals need to get a PVG? Will it be okay to apply once they're voted in and hope that the applications are through by the start of the academic year in August? So as we've said there, it will be an offence for you to undertake the regulated role unless you have received the PVG results back. So in this scenario, it should be acceptable for the check to be carried out on prospective candidates in advance of the decision as a part of overall assessing their suitability for the role. You may need to require individuals to declare their interest in advance of AGM, board meetings, etc., to facilitate the necessary PVG checks being carried out. So if you have an AGM in June and we want to, for example, vote on, let's go there with, for example, we've got Finlay, Helen and Cheryl there. If Finlay, Helen and Cheryl voted on in June, we have until the start of the new school year in August to get their PVGs back to ensure that they are appropriate people to be on the Parent Council, if there is a requirement for the PVGs. So we can do that. If then we are not putting in a new, for example, Parent Council until the start of the new school year in August, it may well then have to be that, for example, we use some carrying over parents in at the start of the new school year until any new members of the Parent Council have the appropriate PVG checks if required. And then next. So another sort of couple of examples here. Jennifer's the chair of the Parent Council. Michael's a member of the Parent Council. They both help organise fundraising events, including discos, school fairs, as well as chairing and attending the Parent Council meetings. So Jennifer's responsible for the money raised and is a member of the organising committee, doesn't have any contact with the children. Michael's responsible for unaccompanied children at events and ensuring their safety. So Jennifer is in a regulated role, as is in contact with the children and carrying out a regulated activity. The contact is not direct, but because Jennifer, in the role of chair, has the power or influence over what activities, etc., that we're going to run, that brings Jennifer into the PVG scheme. Michael is also in a regulated role as the contact with the children there, and the carrying out of the regulated activities in Michael's case is his normal duties as a member of the Parent Council, to be in charge of, to have unsupervised contact with children on a regular basis. So that brings Michael into the PVG scheme as well. Okay, next. So we've got 5 questions that we can ask ourselves about, do we need to access a PVG check? First off, is the individual working? And there, as we said earlier, that is paid or voluntary. Are they working for you as the Parent Council, as a group? If so, that's one step. Okay, step 2 is, who are they working with? Where we would say generally, are you working with children? Are you working with protected adults? Are you working with both? For the Parent Councils, you're going to be looking at it as being, both. You're looking at it as being work with children. So that would be fine. So next. And then it's, what are you doing? What work are you doing that could be considered a regulated activity? So what you're looking at there is things such as teaching, training, instructing, things such as being in charge of vulnerable individuals. There's the provision of sports coaching. There's providing, transport services that are aimed at children. Things like that fall into the PVG system. You've also got, is the work being undertaken in a regulated location? So, I was going to say schools, but they are not called schools within the legislation. They are called educational establishments. Educational establishments, as we say, schools, further education, colleges. If you have, as a part of your normal duties, the ability to have unsupervised contact with children within a regulated location, i.e. an educational establishment, i.e. a school, if your normal duties give you the opportunity to have that unsupervised contact in the school, that will also bring you into the PVG system. So if you are running activities within the school, you have the opportunity for unsupervised contact within the school there, that can bring you into the PVG scheme. Okay, next. Is it their normal duties? Is the regulated activity incidental? So as we said there earlier, and I can see it has just flashed through there on the chat, there is no definition of how often an event must occur for it to be the normal duties. Regular activity is about every single group. It doesn't matter if you're a parent council, if you're the NHS, if you're an organisation that is providing mental health support to individuals. It is about how often are our staff are our volunteers going to be working with, having regular contact with vulnerable individuals? So for the Parent Council, it is about the activities that we are offering. If those activities, as we say, are on a regular basis, and it is the same people who are undertaking the activities, then you're looking at accessing PVG for those individuals. If you are using parents as a one-off, there is no intention to use them again, their contact would be incidental. There would then not be a requirement to access a PVG check on those individuals. Okay, so next there. Are there any exceptions that apply? So, for example, we've got there, do you have the position of power or influence where you may not have direct contact with vulnerable individuals? There's also, for example, within PVG, individuals who have supervisory or line manager responsibility for those who are undertaking the regulated activities. Not sure that that would fall in for parent councils, but what you're looking at there is if you have somebody who has the supervisory management responsibility for a member of the parent council, then that individual doesn't require to have direct contact with the children. They would fall into PVG because they are supervising or line managing. Supervising, line managing, power or influence is being brought in to the PVG system to ensure that those individuals that are running activities, are offering activities, even though they don't come into direct contact with vulnerable people, they are suitable to run, to offer those services, those activities. Okay, next. And changes to the PVG application process from today is different names now for the disclosure checking. Level 1 and Level 2 will now be our new levels of disclosure. Next. Yeah. And we've got a little sort of graph, well, not a little graph, but a little graphic here of what PVG checks we would require, where PVG, I should say, fits into it. Level 1 is your old basic disclosure. Level 2 is your old standard disclosure. Your PVG checks are now your PVG scheme applications here. We've got the PVG scheme to join, where an individual looks to join the PVG system for work with parent councils for children, and we've got the PVG scheme existing, where the individual is already a member of the PVG scheme for work with children. We've got the costs there across the top. As we mentioned earlier, it is a fee waivers in place for volunteers and qualifying voluntary organisations such as parent councils. So we say if the school has to do a PVG, then those are the costs that are attached to those PVG checks. If you have people who meet the PVG requirements, you are required to do a PVG scheme check. They're one of the two options there at the £59 or the £18. The level 1s, the level 2s, the confirmation of PVG scheme membership are not for groups that are accessing disclosure check. Level 1 and level 2s for people who aren't in regulated roles with children or protected adults, and the confirmation of scheme membership at the right-hand side there is for individuals who are, for example, self-employed. So if, for example, if Victoria there asked me to come in to teach her children how to play the piano, for example, we're going round to Victoria's house, Victoria's got a piano, I'm going to teach the children how to play it, I would go through a confirmation of the PVG scheme because I am self-employed. Anybody going through a group such as a parent council then would be accessing the PVG scheme to join or the PVG scheme existing check. And as I say, keep saying here, fee waivers for qualifying voluntary organisations such as parent councils. Okay, next. Now, what you're also going to see from next year, from April 2026, will be the implementation of a 5-year time-limited PVG membership. The end of your lifetime PVG will come in next year. Everybody who wants to remain a PVG scheme member will at some point between 2026 and 2031 be asked to recheck themselves or go through an organisation such as a parent council, such as your daytime employment. Members will still have to make, though, multiple applications over the course of the 5 years. It's not going to be that, for example, there Rebecca does a PVG check and that covers Rebecca for the next 5 years. If Rebecca goes off and works with other groups, they'll still have to be linked to Rebecca, so there will be a requirement to access PVG checks over the course of the 5 years if required, but it will be a 5-year membership. And yeah, I saw it going through the chat there at the bottom. Somebody was asking a question about PVG and GDPR, and one of the reasons why we're moving to a 5-year membership is to try and stop groups accessing information that they no longer have an entitlement to. For example, PVG has now been running since 2011. Chances are that anybody a parent council checked in 2011 is no longer a member of that parent council, but that individual could still be linked to you on the PVG scheme. And if they were, for example, to be barred tomorrow, then you could get information to which you are not entitled. Disclosure Scotland estimate bringing in 5-year membership will take roughly 300,000 people out of the PVG system. So next there. Now, there's also going to come in today a minimum age of 16-year-old on who can access a disclosure check. This is any disclosure check, not just PVG's level 1s and level 2s as well. Under 16s will still be able to access a regulated role, but you will not be able to PVG check those individuals. So if you have older children within the school, and they are helping out at parent council activities, if they are 17, 18, and are doing on a regular basis activities that bring them into the PVG scheme, you can PVG check them. But if they are under 16, there will not be the ability to PVG check them. And one of the things that we're going to be doing there as well is convictions accrued by individuals between the ages of 12 and 17 will no longer automatically be released on a disclosure. Any person working for the parent council or indeed any organisation from today, if you have a conviction which was given to you between the ages of 12 and 17, Disclosure Scotland will now have the power to remove that from a disclosure, even though it is still considered a live conviction. And the individual, if Disclosure Scotland keep it on the disclosure, will now have the right to appeal to have that removed from their disclosure. Next. And there's also going to be a reduction in disclosure periods for certain convictions. The PVG system, because you are looking to work with children, with I keep trying to say protect, you're working with children, because you're looking to work with children, as it says there at the middle point, relevant and serious convictions can be disclosed to you for a longer period of time. Until yesterday, that was up to, or could be beyond 15 years. From today, it is now 11 years. So, for example, if Laura there gets a conviction for breach of the peace, that is a conviction that can stay on Laura's disclosure record for 11 years, even though it's spent in the, under the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. Because you're working with vulnerable people, then what you are looking at is that information can stay on for a longer period, as we say, up to or beyond 11 years, depending on the conviction. Next. So what we've got here is we've got links to, we've also sent a copy over to Connect that Connect can forward on, is first off, we have, because we recognise parent councils may now fall into the PVG system, where up until yesterday they did not. What you're looking at here is we've got a shorter registration form that parent councils can use to enrol to then be able to access disclosure checks. There's also the online application service. 98% of PVG checks are now done via the online portal. So we've got a sort of a link there to that. Everybody can access that information. That information goes out, gets sent through the PVG system, goes to the individual, they complete their PVG. They will then hopefully get an email back to tell them that their PVG is completed and that they are suitable to do the work. They now have to share that information with you as an employer. You cannot put a person into a regulated position without seeing that individual's PVG. And I did see it sneak through in the chat there at the bottom of my screen. If you are using the online portal, there is now no longer the option to get a paper copy of the certificate result. The certificate information, the PVG result, will now be a digital copy, and that will go to the signatory. Next. So we've got a copy of their enrolment form there. And I can see there's a couple of questions going through the chat there about being the employer. Within the PVG scheme, what you're looking at is whether or not you are in a paid position or a voluntary position. You access a disclosure check because you are in a paid position, you are in a voluntary position with an organisation. For example, a qualifying voluntary organisation such as a parent council. I'm just using the word employer there as a cover-all for everybody who is volunteering, for example, within the parent councils. So if you have somebody who is volunteering within the parent council, then technically there must be an individual within the parent council who is responsible for that person's PVG checking, for that person's suitability. And I'm just using sort of employment, volunteering, etc., as a shortcut for that. Yes, you are not physically, if you like, employing them, but because you are, because the individual is undertaking the regulated work for you, the PVG system sort of expects that that person is employed, be it as a paid member of staff, be it as a volunteer. Okay, next. So as we said there, what does that mean? Becomes a legal requirement. We'll have to do the PVG checks of individuals. Say it will be an offence to use regular volunteers who are not PVG checked through the parent council if they are undertaking regulated activities. And as I say there, it means that you can no longer rely on school staff or teachers to volunteer for events unless they are registered with you through the parent council. And as we've already mentioned there will then be the requirement for the 5-year recheck. So if you've got somebody who is volunteering with you over 5 years, it may be that you have to do more than one PVG check on them. Okay, next. The main changes to PVG that have come in today, as we said there, I'm going to go down right-hand column first. We've got the age of 16. Nobody under 16 can be disclosure checked in most circumstances. Childhood convictions and other relevant information there at the bottom. Both of them, now the opportunity is there at the point of the certificate result being issued to the applicant that they've got the opportunity to remove their some information there. So the disclosure period for the more serious convictions comes down from 15 to 11 years. It's now an easier process to request the removal of that information. You no longer have to go to the sheriff court. And then what you're looking at over the other side, as we say, we've got legal requirements, regulated roles coming in. The legal requirement to make a referral stays in place. If you remove somebody from a regulated position because of inappropriate behaviours towards children, then you have legally to make a referral to Disclosure Scotland. As we say, more digital delivery of the disclosure checking. Disclosure process has been made simpler for you. And as we've got there as well, we've got standard conditions coming in later this year where Disclosure Scotland will have the opportunity in some cases to stop an individual from undertaking a regulated role, even if the PVG system says that they are suitable to be in the role. Next. So, questions?
Okay, I'll just come back on now here, Duncan. So thank you so much. So yeah, you'll have seen the chat is full of lots of different questions and some similar questions as well. So I'll just jump in just to reassure everybody that we have got some information to share with you tomorrow. So we are working with Volunteer Scotland and we'll continue to work with them to look to see how we can support our members here, and also we will share the information more widely about the concerns that everybody else has in terms of being prepared and how to manage these changes. So we've got some time here to give Duncan some of the questions. There's loads of questions. We will pull all these questions and we will answer. We'll try our best to answer all these questions, and we will send that document on to you at another point when we've collated them all. We will not get through all these questions tonight. There's too many, but as I say, we will work towards getting the answers. Is Tina or Sarah able to pull together some of the questions that Duncan might be able to answer that's been recurring or a pattern?
I will try and pull together a few of them, and then hopefully Sarah can follow on as needed. It seems to me there's three things. There's the jargon, there's the actual process, how Volunteer Scotland does things, how parent councils do things, how the individual does things. You've obviously set out the steps, but there's some questions around that. And then there's the panic and the impact of volunteering and questions around head teachers and staff being effectively PVG'd by the parent council. So I'll begin with some practical ones. Somebody asked about, is there a way to see live PVGs? How and who will know who in their parent group has been PVG'd and that it's still okay? I know you did touch on this, but I think people who are not familiar with the process will be like, ugh.
No, okay, yeah, that's fine. So we sent over to Connect, which Connect we're going to think is a issue tomorrow. Is what we have is we've got a sample tracking sheet that you can note down everybody that you have access to PVG check for, those that you have sent off, those that have come back and are completed, and you can store that information around who you as a group have PVG checked. If you access a PVG check on an individual, all people that you are connected to on the PVG system are subject to what's called ongoing monitoring. That is, if tomorrow, for example, Diane there is convicted of an offence, that information goes on to Diane's PVG record. And if Diane is because of that information, moved to being barred from working with children or moved to being considered for barring from working with children, all interested parties, that is anybody who's accessed a PVG check on Diane, will be notified of the change in status. You are not notified of every single piece of new information. So if Diane gets fined £100 tomorrow for parking on the zigzags outside of the school, that will not be sent to you. You will not be informed of that because that isn't going to bar Diane from working with children. But if Diane or any other individual does commit an offence, or there is, for example, as we mentioned, a referral from an organisation such as a parent council, then and that leads to somebody being considered or leads to somebody being barred, so say all interested parties then will be notified of that.
So there's a follow-up question, which I think we'll pick up in our Q&As, is what do people do then and will they get guidance? That's a fair point. The question people were asking as well was, if you stop being a volunteer for your parent group, who notifies to get somebody, as it were, disconnected from their PVG scheme for that role?
Technically, it is the individual's responsibility, but nobody does that, which is one of the reasons why we are going to see next year the implementation of the 5-year membership and the removal of 300,000 or so people from PVG, because that's 300,000 people that are being continuously monitored for no reason.
And there was a few questions about if you've got an old PVG. I think we did some publicity around register for the online version now and all of that. But if you've got an old PVG under the old legislation, what should you do?
You are still a PVG member. Your membership has not changed. If you were a PVG member yesterday for your parent council, for your day job, for any other volunteering that you are doing, you remain a PVG member today. It is only with the introduction of the 5-year membership next year that people will start to be removed from the PVG system. The changes to PVG that have come in today were not designed to take people out of the PVG system. They were designed to, if you like, close some loopholes within the system that allowed unsuitable people to have the opportunity to work with vulnerable individuals.
So there were a lot of very specific questions, but a lot of them on the same topics. If you're serving juice at a disco, is that a regulated role? If you're the person designated to help children change if they spill juice on themselves, is that a regulated role? So people are getting quite stressed about the different components, you know, of helping. And a disco is just for children.
Yep.
No parents, the parents are not there with the children. So there's the disco question. There's also the question around parent group power and responsibility and around that sort of area. And I think you had suggested that office bearers should be PVG'd, but I might be wrong about that because I'm trying to read and listen at the same time.
Right. So what you're looking at is, as you say, for example, a school disco. If somebody is there specifically to take money on the door, to, as you say, sell cans of juice, packets of crisps or whatever to the children that are attending, that is not going to be a regulated activity within PVG. Because they're coming into contact with children, but they are not there to do a regulated activity. What you'd be looking at within the regulated activities, and say school discos, trips, you know, etc., would be those individuals who are, if you like, in charge, who have supervised, unsupervised contact with the children. You can see there's Claire there's just put in the chat there, doesn't matter if somebody is supervised or unsupervised. It doesn't matter if somebody is supervised or unsupervised. Unsupervised contact brings you into the PVG in certain circumstances. That should be sort of fine for everybody. But you can still fall into the PVG even if the children are supervised, if you are still providing a regulated activity to them. So, for example, if let's say we're running a sports club on a Tuesday evening, the parents come along, they're standing at the side as we are, for example, training the children in that sport. Even though the parents are there looking after their own children, sports coaching is a regulated activity, so that brings us into the PVG system. It's to ensure that those doing all sorts of regulated roles get the appropriate PVG checks, even if there are parents there, because there is the opportunity to form relationships, to get people to come and do something, outside of that activity.
Thank you. I think the other main area of kind of agitation is around staff and head teachers and the prospect of trying to PVG the parent council, the PTA, trying to PVG these staff and maybe having access to some of their personal information and details and all of these sorts of things. We talked about this before the session because, this is a kind of a difficult area. I think it's reasonable to say, but just to get your take on that and the practical realities around that.
Right. So I guess the practical realities are people see the words legal requirement to get a PVG check, and the automatic thought for a lot of people is, oh crikey, we now must PVG check everybody who comes along to the activities that we are running. That is not the aim of the legal requirement. The aim of the legal requirement is to ensure that anybody who is working with, volunteering with children on a regular basis has the appropriate disclosure check. So if, for example, let us go there. I've got Rachel there at the bottom of the chat there. Rachel is a teacher. Rachel is going to come and help out with us as a one-off. Rachel does not need a PVG check for the parent council. If Rachel then says, well, I really enjoyed helping out, can I come and volunteer maybe once a term at an activity that the parent council is doing and, have supervisory responsibility for the children because they all know me, then Rachel falls into PVG for the parent council. It is about doing the role on a regular basis. Now, I know this is the issue that the legislation doesn't define what a regular basis is, but it is about you as the parent council determining what activities are we offering, who is going to be offering them from within the parent council, from within the general body of parents in the school. Are they doing that as a one-off? Are they doing it as regular contact with the children? And it's only if it's regular contact that they will require a PVG check. And as we said, it's the same with the power or influence. They only need the PVG check if it is one of your main aims to work with children within the parent council and they are specifically in a position of power or influence over the services, the activities that are being offered to the children.
Thank you, Duncan. I know we're in a fair area of complexity. I think that goes without saying.
Yeah, I know, and I know I can see there. So Rachel was asking the question: why does the teacher need checked if they've already got a clear PVG for the school? The answer is, it's, if you like, it's you as the parent council have been caught up here within the changes to the PVG legislation in that the making PVG a legal requirement requires an individual to have that check for every group that they're doing a regulated role for. So the parent council is seen as being a different organisation, a different employer, if we like, from the school. So therefore, the individual, if they're a teacher, could be seen as working with both groups. So that's two different groups. So you require a PVG check. So we were talking there sort of earlier before everybody came in. Somebody couldn't come because we were talking about, was it doing a PVG check for the local, was it cricket club and football club? That's two separate clubs, but because the individual is coaching children at two different sports clubs, they still require two different PVGs.
Okay.
There's sorry, just very quickly, somebody's asking in the chat if they have specific questions, put them into the chat and we'll mop them up in a kind of deeper dive into the Q&A. There are some questions that have not been answered yet, not by us and not by Volunteer Scotland, like, what is regular. We know that that's not, anything we could do anything more about, but we are asking about those things.
I'm going to say, you're at this point in time, you're unlikely to get a fuller definition of regular, as I say, other than you've got the expectation, anticipation that the person will be undertaking the regulated role for you.
And again, we keep getting the question that if parents are there looking after their children, do people need to be PVG'd? No. The parents are responsible for their children.
No is the answer. Sorry, you've got that wrong.
Okay.
Even if the parents are there, if you are undertaking a regulated activity, which is part of your normal duties, you do need a PVG check. Doesn't matter if teachers are there, doesn't matter if parents are there. It's about whether or not you are undertaking a regulated activity.
And I think our example was something like face painting, where you're directly contacting children.
Things like face painting. I saw there was a couple of questions I so went through in the chat. If you are putting on, for example, let's say there's an Easter fair in the next couple of weeks that you are putting on. If you are inviting, for example, face painters to come along to paint faces, it's then about how are you running that activity. Are you saying, right, for example, you can only be face painted if the parent is there, in which case the parent has the responsibility, there's not a regulated activity going on, then that brings you into or out of PVG. But if we, for example, are putting the children into a little sort of tent at the side of, the school field where they're going to go in, they're going to be left unsupervised and the face painting's going to go on, then you're probably looking at getting the face painter PVG checked. It's like if you hire, for example, a bouncy castle. Bouncy castle, going to be far more attractive to children than it is to adults. So that person probably works with children on a regular basis. They should have their own PVG. You should be looking at, you know, saying to the individual, do you have the appropriate disclosure check?
Last thing I would like to say is that Connect members need to risk assess. They need to look at the whole situation. They need to work through what if this, what if that, as well as looking at the PVG.
I could see, sorry, I could see in the chat there, somebody was saying, is there a sort of a bulleted point of a bulleted list of activities? We've sent that over to Connect as well. I'm trying now to remember what I have sent to Connect. So there is a list of activities specifically for children that they can be sent out. There is more. There is also a document which is more information on those that are in positions of power, such as committee members with the power and influence as well.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm just aware. I mean, there's a lot of people still here. The session was supposed to finish at 9 o'clock. I think what I'll do is I will start to round it up now. I said at the beginning, and I'll repeat some of the messages I said at the start for MD who came in late, and also just to repeat it again for information. So the PowerPoint presentation will be sent out to you. The information that Duncan has sent over to us, so there is other information that should answer some of the questions that you have here. So that will also be sent out to everybody who's signed up for this session. Will get access to this. The PowerPoint, this webinar will also be, it's being recorded, so you will be able to access it as well. There are some questions that perhaps we can't answer just now because like Duncan was saying earlier on, like the definition of regular, you know, Duncan's working within the legislation, what's there, and so are we. So Connect, as I say, are continuing to work with Volunteer Scotland and the Scottish Government as this kind of unrolls and unravels. So we do appreciate that everyone is, you know, there's some concerns there and some anxieties, and there's lots of questions. I said at the start that we would pull all the questions from the chat, and that is what we will do. So we'll take the questions, we'll work with Duncan, and we'll try and work through these so that we can get an answer. We'll put it together, and because we have your contact details, we can send this back out again. So thank you so much. Are you wanting to say something, Duncan, just before?
Yeah, I was going to say there before we finish, you know, don't panic will be sort of the general gist of things. Yes, there is this new thing of the legal requirement, but again, as we have to say, it is about ensuring that those individuals who are working with children on a regular basis get the appropriate PVG checks. If your parent council is not offering activities to children, if you're not doing discos, you're not doing school trips, etc., you're not coming into contact with them, you're not going to require a PVG check.
Just to hop in there, so this did come up in the chat. People were saying that they just represent parent views. But does that mean power influence? I mean, in our understanding, it doesn't, because all the parent council is doing is representing those views to the school, to the head teacher, and it's the head teacher who then makes that decision.
Yes, it would be, for example, if I give the local parent council round here, if I give them £1,000 to spend on a end of term activity, I'm not in a position of power or influence. Yes, the school can decide to have a disco, the school can hire buses and take all the kids to Edinburgh Zoo or whatever, but I'm not in a position of power or influence. It is the school, it is the parent council that makes, if you like, the final decision, that have the power or influence. It's not me, for example, as you say, giving my advice or giving the money for that activity.
Okay, is that the last questions now? Yes, okay. Thank you. So as I said, we will send the information on to you tomorrow. And so just again to say thank you so much to Duncan for coming along tonight, for delivering the presentation and answering the questions. And we'll continue to liaise with Duncan to get these, to look and see if we can answer these questions. But thank you so much for everyone that came along tonight. And as I say, thanks for all the questions. And we know there are frustrations out there. We're with you in terms of we're trying to support you. We're trying to get the answers us, and we will all work together. And I've seen some ideas of setting up WhatsApp groups and communities of support, and perhaps that sort of thing will be helpful as people start to unravel what this means for your own parent group. So thank you so much for holding on a bit extra tonight. Use our feedback quick form for any feedback or questions or suggestions for us to move forward. So but I'll close it off there because I think we could easily be here for another hour. But I as I say, we'll be in contact with the information tomorrow. So wishing you all the best for tonight, and a big thank you again to Duncan for coming along tonight.
Oh, thanks everybody for coming along. Say if anybody does have any questions, Connect will help out, and I did put my details in the chat there as well, so you can email us over.
Yeah, I've got these. I've got you'll get this in the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks a lot. Good night.